Hello all, I'm Jamie from Craftmania, and today I want to talk to you about a recent project that we launched on one of our Craftmania Sunday showcases. Now you may have seen this very large exploding box on our Sunday showcase of 27th of January 2019, where we launched lots of lovely dies and stamps. If you haven't seen that showcase yet, do go have a little look at it. Even if we're years after that date, you may like to go and be tempted by lots of the dies and products that we had on that one. And you'll also see about 12 different projects that we made on that video showing you how you could use them products. Out of all of the different projects we made, this one received a horrendous amount of questions and comments, and everyone really seemed to love it. So today I thought I would bring you a video telling you the measurements and dimensions and bits and ways that you can create this ever so large exploding box at home if you wish to. It's also a bit of a trial for us here at Craftmania because we are looking into creating purchasable lesson videos that you'll be able to buy direct from our website and actually craft along with us, so that if you don't live close to one of our stores or just due to work or home commitments you can't make it to our Craftmania lessons, you'll actually be able to do projects similar or possibly even the ones or Sunday showcase projects we'll see through different videos actually on our website. And then the good bit with this obviously is you can pause us and rewind us and go back and forth, so you can create and hopefully be inspired by some of the projects that you'll be able to see on them. But of course, as always, we will keep you up to date for our YouTube videos and of course on our Facebook about when these videos do actually launch later on in the year. But back to today. Today we are looking at this project in mind, and I'm going to hopefully show you ways that you can create it. Now today's video isn't actually about copying this 100%. I more want to show you how you can do it and explain to you the different bits that you need to do it. We're not going to end up with a carbon copy of this, just something similar to hopefully give you some inspiration. Now, if you haven't seen large exploding boxes or exploding boxes at all, the idea is we start off with this very nice presentable box form that you can give to a loved one or family member or friend. And then when they actually release the lid, it will fall down and create all these different pockets and leaves of decoration that of course we can create loads of different things on. I've gone for quite a simplistic butterfly and birds spring style theme. I've added a little hangy bit in the middle here and a little arch that we'll talk about a little later on in today's video, telling you how to create it. But there's loads of different things we can do here obviously. You could also put in chocolates or presents or little gifts or whatever you wanted to. Or of course like this you could create a 3D element as your centre. The actual leaves that fall down, there's nothing stopping you adding loads of different ones of them in as well. You don't have to just stick to the 3 levels I've got. You could create endless ones. Now exploding boxes, whenever I've made them before, we're just going to scoot this one out of the way, I've stuck to more this style and this sort of size. This is actually, I believe, the largest exploding box I've personally made before. And if we take the lid off of this one, you can see that footprint wise this one's quite a lot smaller than the one we're going to be looking at today. Now we're going to keep this one to one side because we will be referring to it as we go through today's video, trying to show you differences between the two projects and ways that you can actually freestyle today's project into your own style and type of crafting. Now, one of the things I've noticed when I've been watching videos like this one before on how to create exploding boxes is how I tend to actually make my boxes slightly different to a lot of other people. And we're going to start off by talking about that. So normally when I've watched other crafters create boxes, they tend to start off with a square of card. Now the square can be any size that you wish for it to be, but you tend to do it so it's dividable by 3 elements, so 3 pieces. So for this one, just for want of this example, I've done a 15 centimetre by 15 centimetre square of card. And I'm going to score it on my scoreboard at 5 centimetres and 10 centimetres, meaning that we now end up with 3 equal size panels. I'm going to twist it and I'm going to score it again at 5 and 10. Now I know score lines aren't always that easy to see in the video, so I do apologise for that, but you should hopefully be able to see we now have like a noughts and crosses style board of scored lines. And we're going to trim these boxes out of these corners. Now also, by the way, for today's project you're going to need a cutting mat, a scoreboard, a bone folder, a pencil, a pair of scissors, some tweezers, a rule, and then your selection of glues. Now I today have got wet glue on hand, double-sided tape and a glue gun. It depends very much on what you like to use, but they're my sort of essential glues. Now going back to this bit, we have now created our X. Now as you can see, we have created our formable pieces. Now you would obviously score this with a bone folder to give it a bit more shape, which is what we'll do a little later on. But just to give you an idea, that's your fall down pieces of your exploding box. Now, the reason I'm not too keen on doing it this way is, as I said earlier, we started with a 15 centimetre square of card. And as you can see, we've cut these pieces off in the corners, which are, to be honest, possibly going to go in my scrap tub. You may want them to cut down later for layers to go on these bits, but there's a potential that you might not need them again. So could possibly be slightly wasteful. And also, you're restricted to the size piece of card you can buy. Now, on top of that, like in store, we go up to A1, so admittedly you could end up with a big old box if you wanted to. But you might not want plain cardstock. You might want to make these out of fancy card or metallic card or embossed card. And they can sometimes be a bit more tricky to get in anything larger than a 12 by 12. Now, of course, if you're starting off with a 12 by 12 sheet, the biggest sort of area that you're going to end up with is a 4-inch size to be dividable by 3. Again, that can still be quite restrictive and certainly smaller than my box today. So I'm going to show you a different way to do them, the way I do my exploding boxes. Now, I do this even when I'm doing the small ones like the Christmas version. So you might want to bear that in mind, you might not, it's up to you. But how I do mine is I actually take 4 pieces of card to cut my outside panels, and I cut them out of just ordinary cardstock or whatever you want to be using, but today we're just going to do them out of white cardstock. And then I cut a middle panel, so we're going to work around by sticking these onto that panel. Now, measurement wise, the outer leaves, these bits that actually make the fall down bits, this is where you need a pen and paper if you haven't got one already. These are going to be 16 by 18 centimetres. So they're 16 centimetres wide by 18 centimetres long. Now I want my actual panel, the bit that's going to fall down for this project, to be a square. Because on mine I've popped in these square dies into the centre of them. So I want that panel to be a square. You don't have to have it as a square. If you look at our Christmas version, you can see that our drop-down leaves are actually all rectangles. And there's nothing wrong with that. So you don't have to keep it to a square if you don't want to. But for this project, we're going to. So once I have cut my pieces to our 16 by 18 centimetres, I'm going to pop them on the board, and I want them to be on the board as a landscape. So we're going to score down on this side here so that we've got the longest side across the top, and we're going to score today at 2 centimetres. Now I've tried to keep this relatively easy for you to remember or write down. A lot of our score lines until we get onto the lid are going to be at 2 centimetres, so bear that in mind. That will be a familiar number by the end of this video. Once you've scored it, we really want to break in them fibres. You want these pages or leaves to fall quite easily. And the more you work this back and forth, you can even go across it with your bone folder, but try and break the fibre in that card and get it to really be ready to collapse when the lid comes off. You don't want it stuck up in the air because it hasn't quite been broken, so try and break it in the best you can. Now, I also like to angle the corners of my leaves. I find if you keep them as a square and we overlap them, in the corners they become quite bulky because you've got 2 levels of card and everything else around it is done at 1 level. So it's good to mitre or cut off, whatever way we wish to describe it, the corners so that when we come to sticking it together, they won't actually overlap, they'll just butt up to the side. Now, I tend to, in honesty, be a bit slapdash and just cut my corners off. If you wish to, you can be a lot more precise. So we know that we've scored down here at 2 centimetres. So if you mark a mark at 2 centimetres across the top there, and then cut from that point to the edge of your score line, and you do that on every corner on all 4 bits, they should butt up against each other perfectly. So if you do want nice square edges, then that's a good way to do it. Personally, I tend to feel that this is going to be underneath everything, and if anyone gets to see this bit, it means your boxes fell apart. And we have a lot more problems and some wonky corners if your boxes fell apart and people are getting to see it. So it's up to you, but I tend to try and cover up my messes. We're now going to go to the inside square. Now this inside square obviously has to be the same width as the leaves themselves. If that was smaller or bigger, you'd end up with gaps around the sides of it. And we don't want that. We want to keep it so it's the same. Now for this example, as I said earlier, I'm not trying to exactly copy that one word for word or colour for colour, but on my original one of these, I actually used a different colour insert panel. So I've stuck mine onto a lilac square using white leaves onto a lilac square. Now you can do like I'm going to do on this one and make it a white one and then pop on top a lilac piece of card, but that's slightly wasteful, so you don't have to do that. Now, in the interest of speed, I've already taken my tape and put it around my square so that I can show you us sticking on the first 3 leaves. But you're just going to match these up and pop them on the side. Now, before you glue these on, if you like my one, you want to create windows in it, we do need to do that first. I'm going to leave one off and we're going to go off and do that in a minute. But just so you can see how we end up with that same X as the other version, that's how you do it. That's your X created, or would be, with the 4th panel. Now, before you go too far, make sure that you can break in all of these and make sure they're all ready to move and that they're all stuck on nice and firmly. Use your score tool if you're struggling to make sure that they're creased and ready so that they pop out when the lid comes off. But let's go to working out our window element on our other panel, shall we? So we'll pop that out of the way for just a little minute. Now, as you can see on my box, I have created an acetate window and I have popped in it this lovely mesh design. Now, the mesh is actually using one of our dies that was launched on our Sunday showcase. If you're watching this yonks after the launch, don't worry. It is a standard die that we keep in stock all of the time. The recommended retail price of our mesh die is £11.49p. One of the good bits with that die is it actually cuts out in its entirety. So when you're actually die cutting, it will come out and you will be ended up with a freestanding element of card, very similar to what you see in die form. Now, in honesty, this is a choice for you. You can measure to where you want your window to be, or you can take your die cut or your die cutter. You can even, if you want to, if you want to be precise, you could send this through your machine and cut your window out with that, and then you will not only end up with the window in place where you want it to be, but you'll also end up with one of the meshes cut out ready for you to use on another project. I say another project because I want these ones to be a different colour to the card that I'm cutting them out of, but that of course is optional. But for me, because I'm not going to die cut this now, I'm going to use this as my template to draw my window. Now, I'm going to be a bit slapdash on today's video because I don't want to keep you here forever, but you can measure that, you can check its level. You can also do it with a ruler. It works out to be roughly about 1.5 centimetres in from each side. So if you prefer to go round and measure and do so with a rule, feel free to, not a problem. I'm now going to cut mine. Now again, if you like using a rule, these are great rules. We actually have a metal edge embedded in the side of our rulers. So when you cut against it, you don't carve into the ruler or end up with a jagged line. They're a really strong side for you to cut against. But truthfully, I find if I try and hold a ruler and a knife and a piece of card, I go well off par. So I tend to do mine a bit more freehand. Now a lot of people struggle with cutting card. And to be honest, the card I'm using now is a 300 GSM card, so it's not the thinnest of card to be trying to cut through. If you do struggle with cutting, a good knife is always a vital part, so make sure that the knife you're using isn't a cheap one. Do get a nice knife. Make sure that you've got a nice sharp new blade in it if you're struggling. And also try standing. A lot of times if you stand up, you've got the weight of your shoulders behind it, and that will help you cut your lines a bit better. If you end up like this, where we have a bit attached in the corner, do go back and cut it with your knife, because if you pull it, it's very tempting if you guys only a little bit and you pull it. Sometimes you can end up with little jagged bits of card in the corner that you then have to trim out anyway. So it tends to be better to just go back and cut it properly. But you've now created your first window. Now obviously we should do this on all 4 of our panels before joining them to the centre part. But I don't want to repeat everything we're doing today 4 times because that's going to be really, really boring for you. So I'm just going to do one panel just to give you an idea of how this all works. Now, once you have your panel created, I've put acetate into mine because I didn't want the corners as they come down getting stuck on the mesh, on tearing or damaging the mesh. So the acetate helps it to just push out and not get caught on the mesh elements. Again, it's quite nice to have that shimmer of the acetate in there as well. Again, optional, you don't have to, but it's the way I like to do mine. I'm just going to put double-sided tape around one side of this, and you don't have to be too precise with this bit because we're going to cut these frames shortly, and that will cover up anything that we're doing right now. So again, don't worry too much about that. But we're going to take your tape off just so we can put your acetate into that window. Now the acetate panel that we're using to go in here is 14 centimetres by 14 centimetres. Mine of course is already pre-cut so that we don't have to keep you waiting for that bit. And I'm not going to be too exact with this because we're going to cover up the edges quite nicely. So if it isn't perfectly level, it doesn't matter. As long as that's what you're seeing through the window, that's the crux of it, that's the bit we need. Now we're going to talk about actually cutting out the frame to pop our mesh panel into. So when we do that, we need an outer frame panel. Now you need 2 of these for each window. So if you remember, we've got one on this side, and of course we've got one on the outside as well. So you do want 2 per one. So for one project, you're going to want 8 of these. Now again, you can cut your lilac and put the die in the middle and send it through, and it will cut out the same window once more for you. Or of course you can do it again by popping it on here and actually just drawing around it. Or of course you can measure it once again. So we'll just quickly draw this one again and cut that out so you've got an idea of what we're creating. So let's get that one out of the way as well. Now this mesh die is one of my favourites, I've got to be honest. It's one we've stocked for quite a while in store, and I just find it so useful for all occasions. It's one of them you could dress it up for Christmas, it was quite nice for weddings. There really is no reason why you couldn't use this, no theme, no time. And I tend to think that's one of the good bits with dies. If you can find ones that you can dress up for multiple themes and occasions, it tends to be a good value, a good investment in my eyes. Sometimes some can be a bit limited, so I quite like that. Okay, once you have now cut your window out, we're then going to use this on top of our acetate. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. If you wish to, you can actually pop your die cut onto here, or like this is how I've done mine actually, is putting the die inside the window and putting it around with some tape. On these ones, to be honest with you, I didn't draw around the die. I've measured in at 1.5 centimetres so that the window is slightly thinner than the actual die cut, so that I could attach my die to the edge of the die, at the edge of the window that I've cut. With the way I've done it this time, just to give you different options, you would need to stick your die cut to your acetate, which is fine. Either way will work, doesn't matter which one you do, but you would stick your die cut down to the actual acetate. With this way, I've actually just stuck my die into my frame using the edge of the frame and some double-sided tape. Now the double-sided tape is much thicker than the die cut frame. The frame actually ends here at the tip of my knife and the tape ends there, but it's enough to hold it in place. I've also put tape over the top of it all the way around this. Now, the reason I've done that is so that this is ready to stick onto my windows. Now, in honesty, you would do better to put your tape on this edge, so out to the outside of the frame, because this mesh is already held in play, but this part could easily get sort of scuffed up on your card. So if you put the tape around the outside edge, it will protect the mesh and the edge of your frame at the same time. So that's something to bear in mind. Also, when we do stick it to the acetate, even if you've gone for the formula of putting the mesh inside the outside frame, it's still a good idea to put a few dabs of glue onto this to hold that part down. I'll show you what I mean. When we put this on top, we're just going to centralise that over the top of our card, not worrying about where the window is, but checking that the outside matches around the sides of our white card so we have a nice equal border all the way. You'll notice that this mesh will sort of protrude slightly off of the acetate. That's why a bit of glue under there could help you out a bit and just keep it all together nice and flat. As I said, we are going to need to do 8 of these. So again, I've done one already. I've prepared this one completely, so you don't have to watch me do it again. But I do want to show you how you need to marry the 2 up. So we're going to take this one. And we're now working obviously on the other side of our panel. And we're going to match that up again, matching up our die, which is also quite important. It's good to use a symmetrical die so that we can pop that over the top, and when we look through the window, it's all matching. That pattern's in place on both sides of it. Our border matches on both sides. We're good to go. And that completes your construction of your leaves. Now it's up to you to decorate them. So on the inside of my leaves, the bit on the inside of the box, because there's so much going on, I didn't worry quite so much. I've just added a peel off board around the outside of it and left the rest of it quite plain. On the outside of the box, I've actually added some really nice chunky pearls. Now hopefully you can see that okay, but we've got the peel off line around the outside the same, and then pearls around the inside of the window. Now the pearls come in lines, so they're not too much of a job to do. If you're wondering if I've stuck them all on individually, I certainly haven't. They come in packets like this. They're already pre-glued. All you've got to do is peel them off and stick them on. Nice and simple. I could have added them on the inside as well. It might have been quite nice to add them too. It's quite good if you have cut your boxes by knife and you might have the odd wiggle or the odd bit to put them on, because it will help cover that up and make it look a little bit neater. So now we have our part that we created earlier with our 3 leaves already in play on our square. We're just going to add on our 4th one to create that finished element there. And then we have that same X formula as we had on our piece of card earlier. And as you can see, we've got one pretty much ready to be decorated and completed. So we're going to pop that one out of the way for the moment. And we're going to look at the base part. Now, another thing that I tend to do slightly different on my boxes is I like to have a little level, a little panel underneath, a little box lid as such, underneath them. So when the box actually opens, there's a bit of a height difference between the base of the element that you've created and the base of your table or wherever you're standing it on. It means that these leaves have got more room to fall down. Instead of just falling down onto a flat surface, they've got a bit of a recess to fall into. And then hopefully you might notice that your leaves sort of protrude up a little bit more, giving you a bit more of a visual effort into each side of it instead of just them all being flat and clunky. So to do that, we are going to use another square of card, obviously, to make another box bit. And this one is 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres. Again, on my project, I actually did this in lilac card. This time we're going to use a piece of white card. But again, colours are completely up to you. One of the bits I love about an exploding box is you can really dress these up to just about any theme. One lady that I've been talking to this week is actually going to become a nan for the first time. She's waiting for a little grandson to arrive very shortly, and she's going to do one of these as a present for the arrival, which is really, really lovely. And of course means that you could do a little baby crib in the middle maybe, and some nice blue and white maybe of your colour scheme. It's one of them things you can dress it up to be whatever you want it to be. Now this time we are scoring again at 2 centimetres, so don't forget we started off with a 20 centimetre piece of card. We've scored 2 centimetres on all 4 sides, just turning our card as we've gone round to score all 4 bits. Again, you're going to use your bone folder at this point to go against these and really get them quite nicely folded up. Again, I'm on a 300 GSM piece of card, so if you don't do this now, it can be a bit tricky to come back after you've built your box and try and get them in play. So you now want your scissors, and we're going to cut these so that we can form this into an actual stand part. So we're going to start off by cutting up one side of the little box we've created in the corner. Now this bit always makes me laugh because these remind me of the little Lego legs that you get on the little figures. I've got no idea why, but I think because it's square it just reminds me of that. I shouldn't confess these things because you're going to think I'm all mad, but that's what I always think. We're now going to take your scissors again and we're going to cut off one side of it. So just a little triangle off of your block. Now you don't want it off this side because that's the bit that the world will see. That's the part that we need to butt this little triangle bit up against. So make sure you cut it off of the square. You're then going to cut another bit off of this side. And to us, we call this plant potting because when you look at it now, it looks like a little cute plant pot. And that's what you're going to do on every corner. So all 4 corners, you are going to plant pot them. Now, it doesn't matter if you work like I am on this one in a clockwise direction and take all of your points going off around, or if you do them so that they run opposite. So let's do a mirrored one on this one for you, or an opposite one on this one. So it doesn't matter if they match out top and bottom like this side, or whether they go all the way around in a circle. It's irrelevant for this project. You just need to make sure that you do your plant pots on all four corners. Now, a lot of people don't cut both sides of their triangle or both sides of their plant pot. They tend to only cut off from one side, being the inside side, the bit that when it goes into the box mechanism, it will actually be up against the roof. But I tend to find if I don't cut this bit off, it makes it bulkier here, which you can sometimes see depending on the project you're doing, and you're more likely to have it protrude out slightly and become a bit more of an eyesore. So by cutting off both sides, it means you don't have to be as exact on when you come to glue them together, and you don't have to worry about that bit being seen. Now, I am a bit of a fan of a glue gun. I tend to do these with glue guns. You can, of course, glue them together using double-sided tape or wet glue, whatever your more favourable choice of glue is. But you just put some glue on and fold it under, hold it for a second, and make sure it's nice and attached before moving on. I'm not going to be particularly fussy today with my gluing or how square my corners are, because I don't want you to be here forever and a day watching me create this box. I really just want to be able to give you the formula so you can make your own. So we have our base in place, and I do want to burst into song, but I'm not going to. I always think of singing when we talk about bases. We have that done now. What we're now going to do is look at how that matches our first set of leaves. So as you can see, that fits perfectly onto that part, which was going to give us that standard bit to fall down on. So I'm not going to worry about gluing this together, because it's good that you're going to be able to see them all as individual pieces at a later date. But that will now stand under there and be our fall down part. So let's stand that in there. And we have our first set of leaves and our base box created, which is a really good place to be. We're doing well. We're on schedule. So let's move on to our next part. So this time we're going to look at the next set of leaves. Now, as you can see on my project, I wanted these to come off as a diagonal. So instead of being the same square and falling on top of the outside squares, I wanted them to fall out in the middle gaps. Makes it a bit trickier when you come to hold it all up together to put it into the lid and into the box form. But I think when it falls down, it gives you much more of a wow factor than one like this, where when these fall down, everything just ends up on the same panels. You don't expect things to be in them gaps, and I think that's quite a nice part to add in. If you do want to do this, then the bit I'm about to show you, you can actually do it a bit bigger, but I'll get to show you that a bit more when we've created it. But you do, because it's going diagonally, we do need to make it slightly smaller. So same formula as last time. We've cut our panels to create our pieces, and I've jumped a bit ahead on this one so that we don't have to go through everything every time. But the bit you do need to know is the sizes for your leaves. So these ones are 11.5 centimetres wide by 17 centimetres long, and you're once again going to score them at 2 centimetres. Now I've done this intentionally, as I said earlier, to try and keep it quite easy. So we've scored at 2. We're going to break that fold in again like we did last time, and then we're going to chop the corners off once again. Once again, you can measure it if you want to, but you don't have to. If you want to be a bit more slap happy like me, we can be. And then you're going to take your double-sided tape off again from underneath your panel, and we're going to pop that one on. Now, the square in the middle of this one is again the same width as your panels. Don't forget that is quite important. So your square actually in the centre here is 11.5 by 11.5 centimetres. So don't forget to add that in. Now, one of the other bits I've done with this one, if you look at my example, is I've actually cornered the tops here. I didn't want them to be quite so square as the other ones. So I've used another die for this, or a die to actually dress them up and give me the angles to cut against. So the die I've gone for this time is another one that we launched on the showcase when we created this exploding box. It's this one here. This is our large corner die. It's 11.49, and when you actually cut it out, it has this block around it as well. So that line actually cuts out as a delicate sort of frame part. The blade runs across here, so this bit is all open. So where you can see the table, that bit will actually be cut out, and this part will be in place to create these really lovely flowers. So I've trimmed off that sort of right angle part to leave me just with a corner piece like such. Now on my box, I've literally laid this on top here, and then cut against it. You can of course measure this and do it on a trimmer or with a knife beforehand, but cut them parts off so that that lays in a V. Very easy to do, but gives you more of a point to your corners than just block edges. I've also added a glittery peel off line going around the top here, and then I've also put one going across the middle as well. I've done this because I wanted to break it off from the top part and the next part down. This part's another one of our dies that we launched. This is our birdhouse border. It's £7.29, and it actually comes with really cute little birds as well that we'll show you. This is the set down here. But I'll be honest, when I did my Sunday showcase, I'd put my birds to one side, totally forgot I'd got them. And then it wasn't until the end of the day when we come to filming the video did I find them. Oops. But the little birds would look lovely if you was to pop them flying around in the little bird houses. It might have been quite a nice decoration to add in as well. So that creates that part of it, which of course is now going to go into the middle of this one. But before we do glue that in place, something else I want to talk to you about is your layers beneath. Now, if you remember this middle part in here, I did that in lilac card on this box here. So if we come back to the original, you can see that I've done mine in lilac. I've also then added a white piece in the middle with a peel off line around it again, just to match in, just to continue the flow. You don't really get to see them too much, but it's good that you know it's there, and you might want to worry about decorating it. They get to see it more when they rebuild it. And if you send something like this to somebody who hasn't seen an exploding box before, they're going to build it and unload it and build it and unload it endless times just because they're going to be fascinated with it. So these white panels on this part is 15.5 centimetres by 15.5 centimetres. So if you do want to add that one in, you can do. Very similarly, we also have one in the middle of this panel as well, and that one is of course 11 centimetres by 11 centimetres. So of course half a centimetre down from the outside one that we stuck everything to, which was your 11.5 by 11.5 base. So just half a centimetre down again for that one, and again peel off line around that one too. The other bit we haven't mentioned about these is the back panel too. So if you want to, like on the back of mine, again, you don't really get to see it too much, but when you look through the box, through the actual mesh, you do see it at that point. So I've added a piece of white card that I've embossed on these ones. And the panel for this is 11 by 14.5 centimetres. Of course, I've cut my corners too, and I've put a peel off line over them as well, just to match in, but again, that's optional. I really like these when they put photos in them, so that might be something you wish to do, but a nice way to decorate them. Okay, so that's level 1 and level 2 down. We're on to level 3. So level 3 again is made very much in the same way. So I've fast forwarded again, and I've made my first part to my X already. Now you need to know the measurements for this one, which is going to be 7.5 centimetres wide by 15 centimetres long. And once again, we're going to score this at 2 centimetres. So back on your board, 2 centimetres score line. Break it in like we have the last ones, just so it's ready to go. Trim it just like we've done before, so it's ready to stick onto our box base. And your actual box base for this one, again, is 7.5 centimetres by 7.5 centimetres. So we'll just take our bits of tape off of that one so we can stick this one on again. There we go. And then we have our third part to our box. Now, of course, this one fits back in here. Now, that one, don't forget, we was doing that off on an angle. So, oh, well, we never spoke about that, did we? I can't let you not know about this. So because we've gone off on an angle, we'll just go back a step, sorry about that. But because we've gone off on an angle, this needs to be quite a bit smaller. Because if we put it as a diamond in there, obviously it needs to match between the two windows either side of it. If you were going to go square in the centre, like the Christmas tree box, you could actually make this quite a bit wider or larger if you wanted to. Or of course you could work out your measurements and add in another set of leaves. So it is optional, but as I keep saying, I do prefer it to go down at an angle and give you that sort of more layered effect. I find when they go down flat, like this is a good example, you tend to cover up a lot of the page beneath it. So you don't then tend to decorate them as much because they're all covered. Whereby that layer not being in the centre, like on my one, it gives you the opportunity to add in details to these. You get to see more of that one and you get to see more of this one. So it just gives you more bang for your money, to me, more effect for your effort. You don't want to decorate all this up and then hide it by the next set. But again, it means that the one that goes in the centre, again, needs to be smaller. if this was going square into that one, once again, we could make this one quite a bit bigger. So if you are thinking of putting photos or lots of memory bits in them, then you might want bigger panels, in which case you might do better to go for that larger effect. But in this sense, for my one, I preferred smaller and more delicate. So again, this one's going to go in on its square part like so. And we need to talk about the white bit that goes in the middle of this one. So this one again has a square that goes in the centre of it. This time your panel is going to be, let's have a little look, I've lost that one on my lists. It's going to be 7 centimetres by 7 centimetres, isn't it? That would make sense. So yeah, we're going to have a 7 centimetre by 7 centimetre square in the bottom there. But before we stick it on, we need to worry about our butterfly creation. So for this bit, I've used one of the dies again from that showcase, one of the ones we have in stock currently, and that is our butterfly ribbon border, which is over here. And that one is $7.99. That's its recommended price. It's very lovely, it's been incredibly popular, and it's really, really delicate. Again, lots and lots we can do with that. And if you do look at these on the website, you're going to get to see lots of cards that have been created with them, not only this exploding box. But to create this arch, what I've done is I've cut 2 of them, and I've done them so one comes up one side and one comes up the other side. If you just continue them in one direction, you'll end up with butterflies facing downwards about here, and I didn't want that. So one comes up one way, one comes up the other way, so they meet head to head in the centre. The ribbon is just threaded all the way through one and then down the other one as well, so it is all one piece. I actually left a small gap in between mine, just a little bit, where they actually sort of butt head to head, because I knew I wanted to hang this element in the centre of it and make a bow, and I didn't want to pull in the dies and damage the paper or the card, so I intentionally left a small gap there. The actual part that I've put it onto is a piece of acetate. The acetate is just there just to give it a bit of body. It makes it a bit more flexible, a bit more resilient, and gives it a bit more strength. So if you do want to hang something in the centre of it like this one, the weight of that isn't going to bring down the cardstock or damage it in any way. So the acetate in place here is actually 31 centimetres by 2 centimetres. And I've just stuck double-sided tape underneath the ribbon and put the acetate onto that the acetate onto the back of the ribbon. You don't tend to see it, but it's just a bit of strength in there. At the end of the acetate, because you're going to end up with a bit of an end either side, I've just scored that and tucked it underneath my white square so that it's stuck in place and got a bit of support, a bit of a foundation there. It's roughly 2 centimetres you'll end up with at the end of each piece. You can score that first if you want to and work with that in play, but just tuck it underneath that square and glue it on, and that will make this created arch for you. The bit in the middle, I've just taken some ribbon and wrapped it round, and I actually glued the ribbon onto the inside of several layers of circles. I've put a butterfly on one side and I've put just a bit of text on the other. But of course that's open for you to decorate in lots of different ways if you want to. You could hang all sorts in there if you wish to. Or of course if you were doing this for a wedding card, that arch would be lovely if you was to put a little bride and groom cake topper style thing underneath it. That could look really, really pretty. I've actually gone for some flowers. Again, on this video, we launched these wonderful new flower stamps. This is the set here. Their recommended retail price is just £6.19, and they actually layer up to create some really stunning effects. But on this project, I just wanted to stamp mine in silver embossing powder, or emboss them in silver on white paper and cut them out. So I've used a pearl white, it's actually called Wedding Ivory, and I've heat embossed in silver just to give it that effect, and added some little gems in the middle of them as well. They're the same gems as well that we put on these panels. I don't think we spoke about these when we did them, did we? Well worth giving you the measurement for them, just in case you do want to add them. These panels are 7 centimetres by 12.5, by the way. And I've put them both sides of my leaves once again so that they're decorated, so when that falls down it gives you a bit of something going on there too. And the little gems in question, the ones that are on here and on in the middles of the flowers on there, come in a little packet. Down here, they're just £1.29. Again, come in lots of different sizes and colours and variations. Again, available in store and online. But they're just pretty little gems to add into the middles of them flowers if you do end up with the stamps on that set. So that creates our actual exploding box. We've spoke about all 3 of the leaves. We've spoke about the arch and we've spoke about the base bit. What we haven't chatted about is the lid. So we need to move on and have a little look at that. So I'm going to move this out of the way for now. We don't need to see that just now. And we'll look at the lid itself. So the lid is really easy to create. It's not too difficult at all. We start off first of all at the bottom one here. Now this is made in exactly the same way as the base is for your box. The size is slightly different. So your actual lid part is 21 centimetres squared, and I've once again scored it at 2 centimetres. I've plant potted it and built it exactly the same as we did that base element. Now the reason this is bigger, because obviously your base and your lid should be roughly the same on a normal project, but the reason this one is a little bit bigger, it's a centimetre bigger than your base element, is that A, you need a bit of room to fit it over the top of it, and B, because I've added on these big chunky pearls, if I didn't allow a little bit more room for the lid to fit over the top of them pearls, it would get stuck on them. So because of these are 6mm pearls, they do protrude out quite a way. We do need a little bit of room and a bit of wiggle room to get that lid over them. So 21 centimetres is your measure for your lid. We're then going to look at our next box up. So you're going to see on this one I've added another box in there. And then on the top I've added another box on top of that. So we're going to start off by building the one on top, and that will explain to you how the one in the middle is done. So I've cut my piece of card for that already. Now this looks like quite a big chunky piece of card, because we're going to do something a bit different with this one. We're not just going to score at 2 centimetres. I warned you when we got to the lid bit, things change up slightly. This is it. So your third layer is 17.5 centimetres wide by 17.5 centimetres long, obviously, because it's a square. And this time we are going to score it at 1 centimetre and 3. So 1 centimetre and 3. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides of your card. So 1 and 3, 1 and 3, and lastly 1 and 3. Now by doing this, in every corner you have created 4 blocks. So we've got 2 rectangles, a little square and a big square. Now what we need to do to begin with is trim off them outside 3. So we want rid of the 2 rectangles and we want rid of that little square, leaving us with what is going to look a little bit like a staircase to me. Little sort of very wonky staircase. I'm glad I'm not walking on it, but you know what I mean. It'll step down in 3 little sections. And we're going to do that on every one of these. So let's trim them off. When you do this yourself and you're getting a bit more confident with it, you can do this stage and the next stage in the same breath. But I tend to find, I know for experience, that it can be a little bit easier if you do this stage 1 and stage 2. It sometimes means you don't get quite as sort of bamboozled with which blocks are going where and why. This will leave you with your 4 bigger blocks, so 1 in each corner. And what we're going to do with them is we're going to trim down the side of them and plant pot them, just like you will have done to create your first lid bit and the base of your box. We're going to do exactly the same again, and we're going to trim them off. So let's work our way around these. Whoop, here we go. And that's that one as well. And then last one, get rid of that one too. And now this is a good time for you to use your score tool and really work in them creases. Because of the different level that we're creating on this one, and the fact that this little lip that we're going to create is only 1 centimetre wide, it's really tricky if you don't do this well at this stage. So really go to town on this and make sure that it's ready to be put in place. We don't want that fighting back. We need that mouldable. Again, you're going to bring up your little plant pots ready to glue in place. So I'll bring them in too. And then I'm going to again glue gun once again. If you want to wet glue it or use your double-sided tape, there's nothing stopping you doing that. And I'm just folding these corners in, and I'll show you on the next one a bit easier. Let's try and get rid of this little lip part for the second so you can see what I'm doing. Let's get that one and this one out of the way, because it's not fair, you can't quite see. And we're going to use the triangle exactly the same as you've done on the last couple. We're going to glue that and bring that over, ignoring that this lip part actually exists. We don't need to know about that just yet. So tuck that out of the way, I'll do that one too. And then our last one of them, bring that in there, and we'll put that down there, lovely. Now we're going to worry about the lip bit. We have the same sort of box style lid or base that you'd normally create, but of course we have this extra flap. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to put some glue on these. And try not to put too much glue on, by the way. If you put too much glue on and it seeps out, it can look a bit messy. This is a bit of a trickier one, so do make sure you hold it and let that glue dry in place. before you move on to your next one. But we're just going to work around and do this on all 4 of our corners once again, overlapping them. It doesn't matter which order you do them in, by the way. You don't have to go in both sides or both ends. As long as all 4 corners are glued, it's fine. Okay, that's our penultimate one done. Let's get on with the last one. Here we go, in there for that one. Brilliant. And that'll just fix that one in place too. Now what you've created, obviously, is a lid panel as such with an edge for us to glue onto. So when we're looking at the fact that we have 3 layers on our lid, obviously something's got to keep these 2 in play. And if we had done it the same as this one, it would be really tricky to glue something big in the middle here or deep to keep these 2 in place. So with that idea, by creating these little edge flaps, we now have somewhere that we can glue that to put it on place onto wherever we wish to. So we're going to take this one out of the way for the moment. So of course that was your top one. So that's your 17.5 by 17.5 piece we started with. And we're going to look at the next one down. So this is your next piece here. Now bizarrely, because we're tucking extra card underneath on this one, you start off with the same 21cm by 21cm square as we did to create the actual lid. But because we're putting more of it underneath than we did on this one, it doesn't matter that we start off with the same size. We will end up with another piece slightly smaller. So that will create your next lid up. And then the last one, the one that we just created, goes on top. Now this one, of course, your 21cm by 21cm piece, you're going to score that exactly the same as we did this one. You're going to score it at 1 centimetre and 3 centimetres, not 2. Get carried away on my own 2. 1 and 3, the same as we just did on that one, to give you that fold under panel. Now, with my little one, the one we built, to go on the top here, I've actually stepped that up quite a bit because, again, I want this to sit as a diamond. So if it's being a diamond, it's got to be a bit smaller so that you can twist it. If we'd done it to the same sort of step-up size as this one, it would be too big and you wouldn't be able to twist it very far at all. And I really wanted to twist it to give me a bit of an area to build on my flowers like I have on my one. If you don't have that shelf part, you haven't got quite as much room to decorate. So I really wanted that part in play. Now, before you glue these together, you also have to consider what else you want to do with them. So as you can see on my 3 levels, I've added white paper or card to each one of them, which is a really nice way to decorate them. So on the first one here, the white is 16.5 by 16.5, and I've added a peel off line around that one once again. On our second layer, this one is 14.5 by 14.5, and again we've got that nice peel off going around it. And then on the very top one, we've gone for an 11cm by 11cm one, and again added our peel off. Now this time I've also put a ribbon going through the top of here, and this is quite important that you do this before you glue your boxes together. If you do want to add the ribbon in play, just pierce a hole through this once you've put the white card on top. Pierce the hole through it, pop your ribbon through, and then just glue gun it to the underneath of this lid. And then that way your ribbon's nice and secure in there, and people can really pull on it if they want to, and it won't come free. But do make sure you do that obviously before you glue it on, because if not, we can't get in there to glue that ribbon in place, can we? So once you've created that, you can now glue all 3 levels together. I've also, by the way, added ribbon around these that you might want to do before you glue them together, thinking about it. Might be a bit easier for you, but that's an optional extra. But if you do want to add ribbon around it, it's quite nice because it helps cover up the corner details and hides the gaps. You can also pull it in a bit more as well if you have been a bit slap happy with your gluing together, and it's a good way to cover it up. Then obviously on my one, as my last decoration, I've added in lots of flowers and butterflies. Now these again, the butterflies come out of another set, just like the flowers do. Again, they're available on the website. But they're just a nice way to glue them on and really go to town with decorating them up, going down the side there. To be honest, if I had have had more time, I would have liked to have done the same on the opposite corner. And possibly even added some in going around the front of my mesh. So if you can imagine with the lid sitting on, might be quite nice to have one of them sort of little flourish sets going round a corner as well to really tie in that theme and then really beautiful flowers. So that completes how to create your exploding box. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to get in contact. You can of course give our store a call on 01493 843 666 and ask for Jamie. Or of course you can email us, you can go on our Facebook page, you can go to our Instagram, our Twitter, our YouTube, whatever medium you wish to, and drop me a question. You can also find my personal Facebook link in the description to this video, and if you wish to get in contact with me that way or friend request me, you're more than welcome to. I'm always here to answer any questions I can do, so please don't hesitate if you do get stuck or have any questions to give me a shout. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, as always, please make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and give us a thumbs up and share it with all your crafty friends as well. And as I said at the beginning of today's video, please do look out for our soon to be released purchasable craft videos, which hopefully will be a little bit more polished and give you a bit more of a sort of more details and bits and hopefully a little bit better than this, but along the lines of today's video, and you'll be able to create some of the projects that you see on our Sunday showcases and in our lessons and bits like that. So do watch out for them. Hopefully they won't be far away. Thank you once again for watching, and hopefully see you on Sunday for our next Sunday showcase. Bye for now. So the acetate itself is 31 centimetres by 2 centimetres wide, and it's just stuck after I've done all of my